Hello, everyone. We're live. Welcome to our live chat. It's February the 4th, 2024. So, we got to talk about romance. It's February, almost Valentine's Day. So today we wanted to talk about romances and rom-coms in particular, with kind of the angle of writing romance or having romantic elements in your stories, but with like a heavy dose of also just romances and romance novels that we've been enjoying lately. So, a little bit of writing, a little bit of media, kind of the sweet spot for the channel lately. So we're going to open with just a little icebreaker question, which is, what is your favorite romance trope to read and or write? If they're different, tell me both of them. I can go first while y'all are thinking, because mine is obviously only one bet. I love to read it. I love to write it. I'll go feral every single time. If I get a whiff that there might be only one bed coming up. So.
I do love forced proximity. I love when like characters have to like work on something together reluctantly. That's always fun.
I am a fan of the fake dating trope for such reasons.
Yeah, subgenre of forced proximity. A sister trope.
Like bigger overall trope, obviously, like huge fan of enemies to lovers. But I also really like, I don't even know what the trope is called, but it's like when they're like, I hate you, and then someone else is mean to that person or like threatens that person. They're like, no, only me. I'm the only one allowed to be a dick to this person. Yeah. I really like that.
Amazing. Hello to everyone in the comments. Let us know your favorite romance trope as well. We've got Misty Kate loves Grumpy Sunshine, and Nicole loves Friends to Lovers.
Mutual pining always is excellent.
Yes.
Especially if they're both big dum-dums and don't realize.
Yeah.
I love mutual pining.
Oh, I know what it is. It's called Who Did This to You?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Who did this to you? Don't kill them.
I used to think that this trope didn't work for me very well, but I've been starting to like it a lot more lately, which is second chance romance. Previously, it didn't work for me because I've usually been of the opinion like, well, if you guys were good for each other, you would have made it work the first time.
Yeah.
But when it's done really convincingly, I really like it.
Yeah, I will say I usually tend to stay away from if that's like the main premise of a romance book, but I think maybe I've read one or two that I've liked.
Yeah.
I feel like there has to be like a good legitimate reason. Like there are some romance tropes that only work if you have like a really good, like miscommunication only works if there's a really good reason. Second chance only works if there's a good reason for why it didn't work but could work now,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, will they have really changed enough? Like I read one not too long ago that I was like, I just still don't think they're good for each other.
Didn't fix any of the problems.
Yeah.
Yes, that actually like touches on something that I have an agenda for tonight. I told them beforehand, but that we're going to talk about in a little bit. It's just like having a good, believable foundation. So for the writing side of things, I'm going to be referencing Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes a lot tonight. Just kind of talking, I highly recommend this book. It is really inexpensive. It is like 60 pages. It is such a fast read. But also, if you don't want to read it, you can go to this website that I've just put in the chat. And if you give her your email address, she will email you the PDF of the beats in Romancing the Beat. And yeah, she doesn't email like ever. I don't think I've ever gotten an email from that aside from the PDF email. So yeah, I just really love that resource. Highly recommend if you are wanting to write a romance or if you're wanting to write something with a really heavy romance subplot. And yeah, we're going to be talking about it tonight as well. So I just wanted y'all to have that up front, so you know I didn't just make this up myself. I'm not that smart. Kind of the initial setup in a traditional romance, you would have a chapter or two to introduce the main characters. And I was curious if y'all have a preference for single POV or dual POV in your romances, whether it's a proper romance or a romantic subplot.
Writing or
sorry. Either.
Oh, go ahead, Emma.
I would say I can enjoy, when I'm reading, I can enjoy either, because I think different books are served by different types of POVs. I prefer the dual POV because I like being able to see both characters, because then you can get things like mutual pining and stuff like that, which is fun. But I think it does kind of depend on the book, because when I'm writing them, I find it just depends on what I've done a lot that were just single POV with romance in them, just because it was what served the story better.
I really enjoy writing dual POV because, like Emma said, I think you can get a glimpse of what's going on in the other character's head, and mutual pining, and but for reading, I'm reading stuff that has romance in it, like fantasy or horror or something. So it's usually like a single POV.
Nice.
I'm like Emma. I can read and enjoy both. But I find, especially with dual POV, if it's a straight up romance book, both of the POVs, or however many POVs there are, have to feel like they're equal in like the amount of story that they have to tell. Because otherwise it's just like, here's how the love interest sees the main character, which is nice to see, but it feels kind of like bonus chapter-y stuff, you know? So, and like from a writing standpoint, I haven't written like a straight romance because I'm queer. No, I'm just joking. It's a wholly romance book, but I've had like romantic elements, and I've only written a single POV so far, because like Erin was saying, most of the books I write are kind of like the fantasy genre, and it has like a romantic element to it, versus if I wrote a wholly romance book, maybe I might be a bit more open to multiple POVs.
Right on. I love the dual POV, whether it's a romance category or not. I like having both POVs. I think because I like a slow burn. And I think a slow burn is really well served with getting both sides of what's going on. So after we've introduced the characters, the typical next beat is the meet cute. And to me, the meet cute is really what showcases the difference between like a romance and a rom-com. I think the meet cute is kind of the defining starting point that'll tell you whether it's comedy or just romance. But I was curious, do you all have a threshold when because I feel like in novels it's not as clear cut what's a romance versus what's a rom-com. So do you have a threshold when you're reading a romance that's like, this should not have been pitched as a rom-com, or something like that?
It's an interesting question, because before the chat, I was looking up lists of books that people considered rom-coms. And I think because comedy is such a unique taste for each person, and it's so hard to nail that broad appeal comedy, that some of the books that they were listing there, it's like, I didn't remember laughing when I was reading this book. Like, it was a romance, there were amusing parts, but it wasn't anything where I was like, oh my gosh, hilarious. Except for Red, White, and Royal Blue. That was the one on the list that was like, I distinctly remember finding this highly amusing, as well as enjoying the romance. So to me, that one is the only one that I saw on the list where I was like, I would define this as a rom-com.
Yeah. Well,
versus a lot of them, I would say, are romance with some funny moments.
It's like, not only is comedy very subjective, comedy is just hard. Like, it's way harder than I think most people give it credit for or realize. And so there's a lot of books that I think are rom-coms, because I can definitely see like that was the aim. But like you, Leah, a lot of them I don't find them that funny, because I find a lot of times like the humor maybe is a little bit forced because they're trying to make it a rom-com, and it's just really hard to do. So I don't know if I have like a threshold for it, but I do have a hard time. I think I've said before, I'm very picky about the romance novels I read. And so I like a rom-com, but yeah, I'm really picky about them. And a lot of them, yeah, I don't find are like making me laugh as much as a rom-com maybe should.
Nice. Does anyone have any favorite meet cutes from any media that you've consumed recently?
Question.
Well, I did read Two Wrongs Make a Right, which is a Much Ado About Nothing Shakespeare retelling set in modern day. And I like the premise of the play to begin with, so I was going to enjoy the book. But I liked that their meet cute is that like they both hate each other instantly. They're just like, no, this is not going well. And then their friends are like, oh my gosh, you guys would be perfect together. So they set them up on a date and everything. And so then they decide we're going to get revenge and we're going to pretend everything is going well and then destroy their dreams. But I like that idea of like, it's not going well, but we will team up in order to get revenge. Like, yes. I don't know. I found that was a unique take.
Seems like a lot of work to just get back at your friends.
Yeah.
I respect that though.
So motivated by spite.
I suddenly can't remember anything I've ever read or watched.
No.
No. Have y'all seen the adventure romance movie with Sandra Bullock? What's it called?
Oh, The
Lost City.
I was just thinking about that movie earlier today.
Love it.
That movie lives in my brain rent free. I think it is my Rome. I think about it like once a week at least. I love it so much.
I really like that the meet cute for that one kind of subverts your expectations a little bit.
It's so good.
Because like she already knows Channing Tatum.
And she's like so annoyed by him.
And she's so annoyed by him. And then you get what you think is gonna be the meet cute with this guy like swooping in to save her. And spoilers, if anyone doesn't want a spoiler for the first plot point of the movie or whatever, take off your earbuds now. But seeing Brad Pitt swoop in and then instantly seeing him killed when you thought
so abruptly. There's just no fanfare to it. He's dead. Oh my god, so good. And Daniel Radcliffe is such a lunatic in that one. I love him so much.
Put him in a rom-com with Quinta Brunson like he wants.
Yes.
All what we want.
You can just tell he revels in that role. Like he just he's so good.
I love like bad first impressions meet cutes. Those are always fun. Like because I was like looking through like what have I read recently that was a rom-com, and like I love the meet cute in Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, where she just like spills her coffee all over Astrid's white outfit. Like I love those sorts of things where it's just like horrible first impression and you're just trying to come back from that the rest of the time.
Yes. I read In the Event of Love like last winter. And that one, it's got kind of Schitt's Creek vibes. And so this like big city second chance romance, but this big city girl is coming back to her hometown and like slips on ice. Her car slips on ice and she just like plows through the love interest's family business sign and just like crashes her car there. Oh, Misty Kate said Caught in the Rain meet cutes. Those are good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say this is only gonna be in like a very select few genres, but I really enjoy meet cutes where they're like they're just enemies, like straight up on different sides of a ages-old battle type of like they've heard about each other before and they're like, this person, I need to like murder them, you know.
Two sides kill each other.
Yeah. Like Mrs. Smith. Oh my God. Fantastic. Somebody do a fantasy version of that. I'm sure it exists out there somewhere. I just need to find it.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of Cale Dietrich's The Love Interest, where they've got to like kill someone, but then they fall in love.
I love it.
We had Mr. Rorosuri said, I love dual POV. I need more polyamory and 3 POV in Trad Club.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say I really want to do a poly book someday. It's on my list. Yes.
I'm writing one right now, but it's not 3 POVs.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
A lot to juggle.
Very interesting.
But if anyone has any good recs, definitely put them in the chat. I wish I had more recs, but if anyone has them, let us know.
I think KT Robert, some of her books might be poly multi POV.
That sounds familiar to me.
Not specifically a romance, but I got the impression that one of the recent Cassandra Clare series was like going towards polyamory with one of the group's characters, but I didn't finish the series, so I don't know for sure. But it definitely seemed like that's where it was
going. We also had a question about starting points. So if it's a romantic sci-fi, could you start a book with like middle of sex and then the story begins and it's plot relevant sex later? I think it depends on the tone you're going for, but there's no reason why you couldn't start it that way.
I think that sets a tone for the story.
Definitely sets a tone.
And I think as long as it's clear pretty quickly that it's like, this is plot relevant. And not just like, and now we pivot. This DK said, I love the idea of a sci-fi rom-com. Yes, I love all these like romance genre blending stories we have coming out right now. I think it's so fun. I want every genre, but with a lot of romance. I don't want only that, but I'm really enjoying that right now. So you've introed your characters. There's been a meet cute of sorts, or a meet not so cute, depending on the romance you're telling. Kind of the next major plot point that Gwen Hayes has is the like no way plot point, which is this compelling reason why there's no way they'll ever be together. And I think this is the trickiest thing to nail in a romance. Like, good premises, you can come up with a good premise pretty easy. You can have a fun meet cute, but like it's hard to convince people like why they shouldn't get together yet.
But not so insurmountable that they wouldn't be able to.
That they wouldn't later, So I was curious if you all have any tips for like finding that sweet spot of insurmountable enough that they don't just start dating the second they meet.
I think you have to really get to know each of the characters involved in the romance to kind of pinpoint like, oh, they have anxiety. So like, you know, opening up to this new person is going to take a while for them, or, you know, something about them, their character that influences how they approach relationships. So even if they do kiss super soon or have sex or whatever it is, the reason why they're not like emotionally vulnerable is something tied to the character. Because I think a lot of romance is character driven. So I think that would be my advice, not having written a full-on romance.
I can only just say from the point of view of someone who has, you know, read romance books and been like, oh, don't do this. Where like the thing is so insurmountable that like I literally can't get into it, because it's like, I think I remember reading one, which will remain unnamed, where the guy, she finds out he's did revenge porn or something on his last ex, and was like, well, I can't be with someone who did that. And then like we slowly get over it. It's like, yeah, I know. I was like, no, like
this is a big no. Thank you.
Like it cannot be like the person is a garbage person.
Right.
It has to be
unless they're both garbage people.
I mean, yes, I guess so.
I think this is why you get like a lot of romance books where like one of the characters is not interested in a serious relationship, or one of them isn't like emotionally available yet, or there's a bad first impression or something. Like you get a lot of that in romance novels because there needs to be some sort of barrier.
Obstacle.
For sure. Nicole said, I think it has to be more than a misunderstanding, but something that it's by resolved growth or change from the characters. I think we talk a lot about, in any genre, this idea of finding your characters like big flaws. And I think that's like more important than ever in romance, because that's kind of all you've got to work with plot-wise. Not that there are no external conflicts in romances, but those are usually just there to like build up the plot a bit.
Oh, I have a question. What do you guys think about romances, whether it's like a romance novel or it's within the context of another genre, but romances where the obstacle of the couple getting together is that one of them's already in a relationship? People have divided feelings on this.
It's a hard sell for me, but I can be convinced.
You have to be really careful and write it really well, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted, Leah.
You're muted, Leah.
It's a real hard sell for me, unless like the relationship that the person is in, they're like actively looking to leave.
I think you have to establish early on that it's not a good relationship for them for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be like abusive or anything, but I think you do have to establish that whether or not this new person came along, this relationship would not last, kind of thing. That helps a lot.
I will say my like all-time favorite rom-com growing up was The Wedding Planner. Which is very much like, I don't even particularly think their relationship is that bad. I don't think they would have lasted long past marriage, but I don't think it was a bad relationship. I think he was probably a bit of a dick, but I loved that movie growing up.
I think it like establishes early on that while it's not necessarily a bad or toxic relationship, like it's not a fulfilling relationship for either of them. And like you definitely know, you can, as a viewer, you can tell from early on that like they would both be happier if this relationship ended, So it's not just the person who's falling in love with someone else would be happier. I think the other person also, you'd be able to tell they would be happier.
And the fact that they had that really interesting foil in like Massimo, who's a very nice guy, like way nicer guy than Matthew McConaughey. He's just nice and loving, and this like, you could be happy, like having that option for her there as well, I think really added complexity that I liked a lot.
I feel like they often do that though. Like the other relationship isn't bad, it's just boring. And like the other person that comes along is like really exciting and new and shiny. And like in the back of my head, I'm always like, is this person making a mistake? Like once the rom-com is over, are they going to be like, oh crap?
Big ol' happy for now.
Yeah, exactly. Where I really like the ones, I can't even remember the name of it, but it had Emma Stone and like John Mayer? No, maybe not. Josh Groban?
Love? No, okay.
Maybe.
No.
Some singer that also acts sometimes. And he just fundamentally didn't understand her personality is what it felt like together, but it was like, you're saying she's got this like wacky sense of humor and he's like, oh honey, you're so silly, stuff like that. Whereas like the person he falls for, like they're very, very similar and they enjoy each other and feed off of each other. So that type of thing, I'm like, yeah, okay. I could see it. Get rid of Josh Groban or whoever he is.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was the singer that's also acting.
I'm trying to figure out what it is.
I forgot every movie Emma Stone's ever been in except for Easy A. The second you said it, I was like, I know it's not Easy A.
I know. It definitely had Emma Stone in it. That's all I remember.
Joe Catherine said the worst obstacle is when it's a really vile misunderstanding. Like, I didn't actually murder my mother in cold blood. She died of natural causes, and I've been lying for reasons. Yes.
Yes, that makes absolute sense.
Oh, yeah, it was Crazy Stupid Love, and it was Josh Groban. You're right.
Thank you. Oh. The look on your faces made me think I was crazy.
I've seen that once, and I do not remember Josh Groban.
Same here, Emma.
I was like, was I imagining this? Did I make it up in my brain for some reason? Yeah. Yeah, he was like this stupid, boring boyfriend that like didn't understand her sense of humor, and you were like automatically sort of hated his dumb face because Emma Stone is amazing.
So after the meet cute, the no way, you've got the adhesion plot point, which is the reason they have to hang out for the entire middle of the book. So to me, like, you've got the meet cute, but the adhesion part of a traditional story structured romance is like, that's the premise of your book. That's the fake dating, that's the second chance. And yeah, so I was wanting to talk a little bit next about, like, so if you've got some characters, how do you pick a premise? Like, how do you pick a plot, especially if you've started with character? How do you decide, and this is how they will move? I know for me, this is the thing that has killed every romance I've ever written, is my, like, I've got a great meet cute, I've got the start of a premise, and I've got two great characters, and then every romance novel that I have not finished, it has been because I haven't been able to come up with like a propulsive enough reason for them to hang out, but not to be dating during that time.
I think it is maybe a bit easier if you are kind of following a particular trope with the adhesion point. Because, for example, I love like enemies to lovers, but like the path that you go to get there of like you're being enemies, then you're forced to work together, then there's grudging admiration, and then there's like, oh no, you're kind of hot, and like, you know, so like that. I think the like the forced proximity, forced to work together, or like fake dating, or whatever. I think those make it easier to find that adhesion point.
Interesting. Joe Catherine said, which plot will make the characters the most uncomfortable?
Which makes for the most awkwardness.
Yeah, and I think you also have to consider, like, if you've started with character, which you probably have for romance, like, what are the things your characters want, and how can, like, being around each other help them get the thing they want.
Or get them to realize what they want is not actually what they want.
Yeah, huge romance.
Yeah,
often common thread. What are y'all's favorite, like, romance premises that you've read recently or watched recently? Obviously, The Lost City. So we all freaked out at that one.
As I've just been marathoning horror movies. It's not helpful in this chat.
The flip side of romance.
The opposite.
I enjoyed Cleat Cute by Merle Wilson.
I'm reading that now.
Yeah. It's a soccer gay well, not exactly a rom-com. I think it's still more of a romance. But yeah, the basic premise of like one of them is brand new to the national team for women's soccer in the US. The other one is like a seasoned veteran. But they're only like 4 years age difference between them. And so just there's like that competition factor, but then they're also falling for each other. So I like it.
And the veteran player is also like the rookie player's like favorite player. She's like admired her career for a really long time.
I like that.
And like the Roy Kent element of like, I'm probably retiring soon.
Yep.
The Roy Kent factor.
I know I already mentioned Ashton Parker Doesn't Fail, but I really liked the concept of that was like, we have to work together to renovate this old inn.
That one.
I wish there had been more of that. Like that was actually one of my critiques of the book, is I was like, I wanted more of like the reality show renovating the inn stuff.
And that one to me also is one of the more compelling fake dating stories. I thought like for that one, I never had a moment where I was like, well, obviously you guys should just start real dating. Like, I'm trying to look like, what have I even read? Have I read a book ever?
I haven't been reading much romance lately. It's been very sad.
I will say, when I was looking up lists of rom-com movies, I was like, oh my gosh, I think Hitch is like the gold standard for me.
Love Hitch. I haven't thought about that movie in such a long time.
I hadn't either, but I was like, this to me, like, along with Red, Roy, and Royal Blue, it's got the perfect blend of like romance and comedy. Like,
actually, when we were talking about like romances versus rom-coms, I find a lot of movies do rom-com better than books do rom-com. Maybe it's because the actors bring like an extra element of the humor. I'm not sure.
Sure.
Oh, I read Rachel Lynn Solomon's Business or Pleasure. That's the romance that I read most recently. I liked it pretty well. But I did think the premise was really interesting because they like meet, have an immediate emotional connection, and then the worst hookup. Like they have such a bad hookup that she's like, this can never happen. But then she gets booked to be his ghostwriter for a job. And yeah, I just thought that was like a really fun, okay, well, I need this job. And we did have this really intense emotional chemistry. So that one was fun.
This was one that I just think was like interesting. Was You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Quicken.
Oh yeah,
I
loved that one.
It's such an like I haven't read another book with like the premise that one had, which is basically like she's in a situationship with this guy and then meets his dad and like has like an immediate connection with the dad.
Oh, I love mess.
Yeah, it was so messy, so messy.
That sounds like drama.
That one was really fun. And she's also like coping with grief, so it's not a rom-com.
They're both like coping with grief, and
Misty Kate said, I read Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks not too long ago. It's an indie that's been picked up by a pub recently. It was cute and fun.
I haven't heard of that one.
I honestly can't believe I haven't brought up Talia Hibbert yet.
Only because I haven't read them recently.
Yeah, it's time for a reread.
I liked her YA that came out last year.
Was it good? I haven't read it yet.
Yeah. Because I was like, why haven't I read more Talia Hibbert recently? I'm like, you have. It was just not adult.
Yeah. Oh, this was also a fun one. The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, which was a paranormal-y romance. Like it's a romance with paranormal elements.
Gotcha.
Where she is a ghostwriter for this really prolific romance novelist. And she doesn't believe in love, obviously. Who would? And the death of her dad brings her back to her hometown just after she's had this like big blow up with her editor, her new editor, who's this like suspiciously handsome guy. And so she goes back to the mortuary that her family runs, and she gets there and she's helping prepare for her dad's funeral and sees the ghost of the suspiciously handsome editor. It was really fun. I really enjoyed that one. Fun in like a sad way, but it's still a romance, so you could expect an ending befitting a romance. I gotta jump back to my my notes. So we've got the premise, the meet cute, all that. And I think there's not a ton to break down with what comes next in a romance. You can pretty easily guess. You get like the increasing suspicion that you might desire this person, or the character has that. They have a maybe this could work moment, which leads to like the big midpoint, which typically romances have like a hookup or a kiss or something at or very close to the midpoint. And then the doubt creeps in. Retreat, shields up. I'm interested in the third act breakup. Yeah, what do you all think of third act breakups these days?
Like the obstacle at the beginning, if there is a third act breakup, it has to be believable why they would break up, but also not insurmountable that you don't understand why they would get back together afterwards.
Yeah. I would agree. I have read, I think more recently, books that don't really have a third act breakup. And sometimes I'm okay with that because it fits with the story. And other times I'm like, I was waiting for it. Like it was building up and then it didn't happen. And not that I want them to be sad, but like, you know.
Sometimes they need it for like the character and relationship development to like make things stronger than it was. But yeah, sometimes it's not necessary. Yeah, I'm glad that now like we've all agreed that they don't have to have them, because I think that was the problem before, is like everyone thought that they had to have one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love a story that finds a way to give you a gut punch without them just throwing in the towel immediately. Mm-hmm. I think that's really fun and refreshing. Yeah. I do love a well-founded third act breakup too, though, obviously. Valerie said, love, hate third act breakups depending on execution. Definitely.
I like what a third act breakup can like lead to, but I think you can do this without them actually breaking up. But I like the grand gesture and things like that, I think are really great. Yeah. But like, do they have to break up for that to happen necessarily?
And sometimes it's like, I'm trying to think of the book. I think it's called The Charm Offensive, where the characters has to like, well, not has to, but like chooses to go to therapy and kind of work through some things before they return to the relationship, which I felt was very realistic for a third act breakup.
Is Get a Life Chloe Brown the one with the redheaded love interest?
Yes.
First one.
I like that one where it's like, it's not really a break. They have like this huge blow up and like slam the doors, and then he just like calls through the door back to her. Like, I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah.
Valerie said, I prefer a dark moment over a breakup. Nicole said, I don't like the breakup. I know it's coming, but I still end up yelling, just love each other at my Kindle. Yes. And kind of, I think, equally as important as a good reason for them to have some sort of blow up in the third act is the grand gesture, like you mentioned, Emma. I think a really good romance grand gesture has to have like a lot going on. Like it has to be sweet. It typically calls back something that you've mentioned earlier. But I also think for it to have a lasting impact, it has to be that like whatever's happened, they've both messed up this relationship. Like both characters have had a flaw that's caused this issue. And so they both need to be involved in making some sort of gesture. Even if one person messed up more and is doing a bigger gesture. It makes me think about also a J-Lo rom-com, but the one with Owen Wilson, which I had such high hopes for. It came out, I think, a couple of years ago, where she's a pop star and he is a single dad with a lot of sadness. And I wanted to love it so much. I was so excited for it. But in the end, like, they both messed up. Arguably, I think he messed up more than her, but she was the one who made the gesture at the end. And that is like a huge pet peeve of mine in romances. You should both be committing at the end.
Yeah, I think like with a third act breakup or like some sort of blowout fight and then the grand gesture afterward, it also kind of gives the reader the impression of like, hey, their relationship after this can weather things like that, you know, versus like if you don't have that, then you're kind of like, oh, is this just kind of like, everything's hunky-dory? Because most relationships are going to have ups and downs.
For sure. Got just a little bit more in my notes here. So we've kind of danced around, you know, like romances as a genre, as like the whole genre of stories. But I think a lot of us, and I suspect a lot of the people watching right now, write more romance subplots as opposed to a category romance, which I also love. I love writing them, but I respect that that's like not everyone's jam. So I was wondering if people have tips for finding ways to make sure that a romance has structure within the confines of a bigger and more important external plot.
I definitely would treat it the way you would treat any other subplot. Yeah, that's the number one thing. Like it's not a less important, I mean, maybe it's a less important subplot, but like it shouldn't just be a less important subplot like to you. Might be less important to the story, but put just as much thought into it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like actually plotting it out. You know, I love my note cards. Like doing the main plot on note cards and then adding, I don't know if you can even see them. I've got a bunch of sticky notes like right there. And I like color code those and stick them on so I can see the structure of it. Like you don't necessarily want your romance arc to be peaking and having all of its dips in the exact same places as your external plot. And I think it's really useful to see like, okay, well, what shape are these making together? And hopefully it's not the exact same line.
Yeah, I find like having read quite a lot of like fantasy and romance, it's like, especially if the fantasy part is way more like that's the big plot and then the romance is complementing it. It should feel all the way through like it is just complementing it, like you're weaving it through. Because I know, like, I'm thinking about one in particular, which again I won't name because I don't feel like I need to do that. But like it felt like we would go fantasy, fantasy, fantasy. We're fighting. We're trying to save the kingdom. And then, okay, sidebar for intense romance scene. So it wasn't like properly woven in. It would be like, we're in the middle of a fight and you've pulled him into a corner and you're making out. And it's like, yeah, so it felt
the fight.
It felt really jarring. So I think you just have to like watch where it fits into your plot and like pacing and timing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's so hard. I know I'm super guilty, especially in early drafts of like, we'll go here and do this plot thing, and then we'll walk over here, and this will be the horror part, and then we'll go over here, and this will be the romance part.
Yeah, and I think there are ways to work a romance into a horror or a fantasy or a sci-fi plot. Like you're gonna have circumstances brought on by that specific plot that you can then use to fuel your romance. It's just a matter of kind of figuring out how and why this plot thing is happening and what your characters do in response to it that furthers their relationship.
Right on. I think too, there's the end. There's always some sort of denouement after the grand gesture in a romance. If you're writing a romance novel, that has to end in a happily ever after or a happy for now, or else you're not writing a romance novel. Which is fine. Just know what you're writing. I don't know that I think the same rules necessarily apply, though, if you're writing a different genre with a heavy romantic element. I don't think it necessarily, well.
I think it's a good idea to be upfront with readers as much as you can. Like, you don't want to, like, spoil everything and reveal everything, but
yeah.
You don't want to, like, over promote the romance if it doesn't have a happily ever after.
Yeah. Like if you were like, this is my romantasy, and then like one of them kills the other at the end or something.
Yeah. Like you might want to say like, this is a fantasy with a tragic romance or something like that.
Right.
I think people are like, writers are so scared of like, well, that spoils the surprise. And it's like, if someone's coming to your story for romance, they don't want to be surprised by that.
Yeah. And I think like if it's like a fantasy romance or like a sci-fi romance, sometimes you can get away with like that the characters don't get together by the end because it's like a series. Versus some, I think with more like contemporary romance, it's rare to have a series with the same couple throughout. So I think there you can get away with it maybe not being like a happy ending at the end, because you're like, well, they've expressed that they like each other, but then circumstances occur and now it's gonna be a while before they get together.
So I think if your like ultimate ending for the romantic couple is a tragic ending in some way, they don't get together. I think you either have to tell people it's a fantasy with a tragic romance, or say it's like a fantasy with a romantic subplot or romantic elements. But I think when you use the word romance without like tragic in front of it, then people start to be like, oh, this is couple's going to get together.
I know with kind of last chapters in romance novels, there's kind of two different outcomes that you can probably expect, which is just a final chapter of them being happy together after what has just happened, or there is a time jump. So you jump forward maybe a year and you see them doing some big relationship milestone. I'm curious, do you all have a preference? Obviously both are valid, but do you have a preference when you're reading?
I think it's kind of like the dual POV versus single POV, where I can enjoy both. It's just the circumstances of that particular book. Where sometimes where it's like, we're going to jump ahead a year to where they have kids and whatever. Sometimes that works, and other times I'm just like, I don't know if these would. I don't know.
I think also,
didn't y'all break up a year ago?
I think it also kind of depends on like what it is the characters want outside of the relationship, how you can best show that they've like achieved that or they've changed their goals or whatever. And sometimes you can do that like in the moment, and sometimes you need to show like a year later and like where they are to kind of complete the character or relationship arc.
If it's just romance, I almost never need that. Like, I don't really need to know, I feel like. But if it's a more complicated plot with more things going on, like a intense high fantasy or something, then yeah, like I want to know how everything shook out afterwards, basically. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Joe Catherine's Song in the Lioness. I was shocked as well.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't thought about that in a long time. All right. Well, we are just under an hour. And yeah, just a reminder, I put a link up higher in the chat towards the beginning to romancingthebeat.com, which is where you can sign up for the author's email list, and you'll receive a PDF of these beats with some descriptions of all of them. I didn't do every beat because I don't know, I feel like I probably shouldn't broadcast the thing that she created on the internet a ton. But so yeah, if you want to look at all those beats really in depth, I would highly recommend reading Romancing the Beat or signing up for Gwen Hayes's newsletter so you can get your own copy. And it's got like a little worksheet element so you could print it out and fill it out yourself if you're plotting. Nick, I just read this comment from Nicole that said, during the last romance stream, Emma mentioned romantic thriller. I'd never read one, so I found one, and boy, was that one heck of a ride. While reading, I just kept thinking, dude, you're in danger.
So curious
now. Emma, have you read a romantic thriller?
I don't think so. I feel like it was maybe an odd genre combination maybe that we were talking about.
Gotcha.
Because no, I have not read. I feel like it's like not too uncommon in like thriller movies for there to be like a romance subplot, you know, like the two spies are falling in love or whatever. But I also just don't read a lot of thrillers, so I guess there's that.
Yeah.
Valerie said my favorite romantic thrillers involve a danger bang.
Nice.
Well, I can't think of a better place to end than there for this romance chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and discussing with us. I had a lot of fun. This was a great discussion. We're going to have a no chat next week, right?
Right.
Next week we are out. So everyone enjoy your week off. And then we will be back the week after that with a presentation night where we're going to make PowerPoints and try to persuade you to consume the media that we've been consuming lately. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for being here. You're all amazing. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.